Yesterday, the Atlantic Coast Conference capitulated. I don't know how we're going to talk about this. They settled with Clemson and Florida State. The way I read it, the grant of rights held, but I think the ACC just wanted all of these things to go away, all the lawsuits that weren't going to go away to go away. They wanted everybody to sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya. I don't know. But they did decide to settle with Clemson and Florida State, which might be a win for others. David McKenzie is an intellectual property attorney, happens to be in Austin, Texas right now, one of my favorite cities to visit. And he joins us on the Adam Gold Show. First of all, thank you very much for doing this. I don't know if you're on vacation or it's a working vacation, but Austin is great. Let me get your reaction first to the settlement.
Well, I think you used the word capitulation, Adam. That would be, I think, entirely accurate. It was complete capitulation to Florida State University, Clemson, and I would argue the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I think that Carolina is easily the biggest winner out of yesterday's deal. I don't think, one point I would disagree with you, Adam, is that I don't think the grant of rights really survived. The grant of rights in so many ways was weakened by yesterday's settlement. Now, I do need to disclose that I haven't seen this deal, and until I do see this deal, I won't know for sure that these opinions that I'm offering are entirely accurate. But, the grant of rights was reduced in terms of its length. And the entire time, the thing that held the ACC together was the grant of rights. Now, there was kind of two components that I've been trying to explain that Florida State was litigating. One was the exit fee, and the other was the grant of rights. The exit fee, in my view, was never really an issue. That amounted to like 3 times the operating revenues of the ACC, which was about $150 million.
Right.
But what Florida State did, and they were excellent at it, was basically amalgamating the value of the grant of rights agreement or the media rights under the grant of rights agreements with the exit fee. So the value of the grant of rights agreements, if you think about their media rights, all you have to do is look, what is the ACC paying out on an annual basis? I think it's something like $50 million a year.
Close.
So there's 11 years left on the grant of rights agreement. So that's $550 million plus the exit fee of roughly $125 million. So you're getting close to $700 million, which is the figure Florida State has been using. Now, they're looking at sort of a graded scale on the exit fee that is now also the value of the grant of rights agreement. So all of that, they've been successful in consolidating into one. And as we saw yesterday, in 2030, it will be basically a sweetheart deal of $75 million to leave. And I would expect that at that time, several schools will do that.
David McKenzie is joining us here, intellectual property attorney. All right, so does this deal... And again, you haven't seen the parameters, but at least my reading of it says that the league stays together until at least 2030. At 2030, Florida State and Clemson could essentially buy their way out, or anybody could buy their way out for, I think it's $75 million, and that also includes the grant. Like that's $75 million you can walk in 2030. Doesn't it,
with your media rights?
With your media rights. Does it bind everybody there until then?
Yes, it does. But yes and no is actually the answer. It probably does bind everybody until there, because the fees that we're talking about still, that I understand are being reported, is that they can still get out. It's a little unclear to me if the value of the exit fee is today, say $150 million, is that under the deal, would Florida State or Clemson want to pay that and take their media rights with them? Why would they want to wait, 5 years? Could be, problematic, especially if they have invitations to join other leagues that are paying astronomically more. So the issue before was always, you can leave at any time. Florida State could leave at any time. Carolina could leave at any time. You just can't leave with your media rights with you.
Right.
And pay the exit fee, but you're not going to, the media rights still belong to the ACC. It's unclear to me now if prior to 2030 that is still the case. It does appear that the revised settlement agreement, or it would have to be a revision also to the Grant of Rights Agreement and then also to the ACC Constitution. But I do think that, at least from published reports, from very reputable journalists like David Hale, you're seeing, that it's all one. It's all one. You get to leave with the exit fee and you get to leave with the media rights. And so that's why this was such an incredible victory for schools named Miami, Florida State, Clemson. And I mean, you got to give it to the Tar Heels. They look absolutely genius today because, I mean, I've been saying it all day. Bubba Cunningham looks like a friggin' genius. And
you use different language, by the way, on your Twitter bio, on your pinned tweet. You use different language than frickin'. David McKenzie is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Can as an attorney, why would the ACC do this? Why would the ACC go so far to bend over? Do you think because I know you believe that the grant of rights would have held in court, right? And I mean, everybody I have spoken to said, yeah, that's going to hold. So why did the ACC give in here, you think?
Well, somebody is going to start having to leak to smart journalists like Brendan Marks, yourself, and get to what really was the reason, because I don't think it had anything to do with the law. I mean, things were, at least in North Carolina, were trending actually pretty well for the ACC. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, in fairness, things were not trending perfectly for the ACC down in Florida, because it did appear that the trial court was buying this very novel sovereign immunity defense to a contract.
Right.
And so that was, and there was summary judgment motions teed up. But I mean, I think it's important for your listeners to understand that, I mean, they were in the second round of a 12-round fight at best. Right. I mean, I filed a case in 2015 that is still going on. So when you have these kind of high stakes litigation, you really do have to have a kind of intestinal fortitude to keep going. And especially when you have the law on your side. I have said repeatedly, and I still believe, that the ACC had the law on their side. To use sovereign immunity as a contract defense to a higher education school would undermine so much about commercial transactions. And I would also argue that when you have a school like Florida State that comes into the state of North Carolina and benefits to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars and is engaged in interstate commerce, it has waived sovereign immunity. So in terms of why did they, to your principal question, why did they end it so soon? Who knows? I don't think it had anything to do with the law. It'd be interesting to see what really comes out and as an understanding. Because
you're also a fan. So let me just pose this to you, and then we could work through it. I don't know if there's a legal or sensible way for you to even answer this. Is it simply better? Because I'm sure you have advised clients, like, it's probably in your best interest to settle this, to eliminate the conversation about two of your highest profile schools suing the league, hostile members, how that impacts the way the league is talked about, how that impacts recruiting, performance, and just to have these lawsuits settled in exchange for 6 years of peace, where everybody can go about the business of winning, and then in 6 years, whatever happens, happens. Is there a benefit to that?
I mean, of course, in law practice management and client relations, there are times when you do advise a client that no matter how much the law is on your side or whatever, that the client just doesn't want to go on. And I do have some empathy for Jim Phillips. I looked at the ACC Constitution today. He had, and it may have changed since Stanford and Canales came on to the scene, but he had to get a 2/3 vote of the 18 members of the Atlantic Coast Conference to do this, a 2/3 vote. And that had to have been like herding cats in terms of client management, because really, so 2/3, you're looking at 12 votes. And I'm sure that those that are in the bottom tier of, and let's be honest, I'm talking about Syracuse, BC,
right?
Love you guys up there, but they cannot be happy with this deal. And I'll correct you, it's 5 years, not 6, and it does begin even this year. So, and it's also interesting that we have this new, this goes to the law, that we have this new model based on viewership. because one of the strengths of any kind of league, especially it seems like the NFL, is an egalitarian business model when it comes to distribution of media rights. And under this new model, there's no reason why I'm sitting here in Texas and I'm thinking there's no reason why the Dallas Cowboys, which is probably the most watched NFL team in history,
right,
and should be demanding more money based on the number of viewers. But, Dallas, you're not going to always be able to have a Dallas Cowboys, Los Angeles Rams type of marquee matchup. Every once in a while, they're going to have to go play our crappy Carolina Panthers, right?
Wow. So, Panthers catching strays here. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, we'll be relegated to a tier 4 game, on those kind of things. So it's an interesting model in terms of how they've sort of chopped it out. But man, all props out to the University of North Carolina for its success in this. It has been able to allow Clemson and Florida State to pay its legal fees, at least in part. We know that they're paying other legal fees that we won't get into, but so that's what I think on the whole new revenue distribution.
David McKenzie, intellectual property attorney. I appreciate your time at McKenzie Law on Twitter. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Although you're leaving Austin, we don't need to know where you're going because it's probably someplace.
Pebble Beach. I'm going to play Pebble Beach.
You're just rubbing it in. Now that not only are the Panthers catching strays, but I feel like I just caught one. Thank you much for your time, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Glad to be with you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
You got it. David McKenzie here on the Adam Gold Show.